Whatever became of Namor, and will the mysteries our heroes uncover be able to shed light on his current actions? Well, let's hop into the pages of Invaders issue number 4 and find out for ourselves, shall we? Alrighty then, so picking up from where the last issue left off, the Human Torch and Captain America are still digging through the wreckage of Namor's newest attack, wherein he ended up seemingly killing one of his old war buddies. The guy's daughter is absolutely distraught and doesn't want to believe it's true, especially because Namor was such a huge part of her family's life in a chapter of his history that has never been told until right now. You see, after the war ended, a confused and distraught Namor decided to shack up with Randall Peterson and his family for a long period of time. Those were happy days, as we discover. He learned a lot about himself and came to terms with a lot of what he did during the war. But as is so sadly often the case in situations like this, Namor's Atlantean duties would end up calling him away from his happy surface family and back into service as king. The Petersons would sadly not see their friend Namor until decades later, after Destine had completely wiped his memory. Yet somehow, despite all of that, his internal compass pointed him back home to his human family in one of the few places on the surface world he actually felt safe. He would stay with the Petersons for a couple more years after that, help them raise their newest son Randall, and eventually get his memories back. Of course, that was something of a monkey's paw. Yeah, it was nice to remember his life, but in doing so, he also remembered all the horrors of war and Tommy the man he couldn't save. It would be around this time, too, that Namor was recruited by none other than Charles Xavier, who had come to tell him of his true heritage. Not only is he half Atlantean, not only is he half human, but there's some mutant in there, too. So, you know, whether you be in the land, the sea, or anywhere in between, you're never going to be accepted because you've got all of these different persecuted groups in you. Now, Dr. Chuck over here is a pretty charismatic guy, and because of that, he's able to eventually convince Namor to join him on his quest to find more mutants across America back in the days before Cerebro made it so dang easy. The Petersons didn't like the idea of Namor getting back out in the world, especially with someone like Charles Xavier, who looked to have a lot of more self-interest going than he did in actually wanting to help out Namor, and in the end, they'd kind of be right. You see, Namor, much like an early Magneto, believed that coexistence between man and mutant would be impossible, especially as he knows full well coexistence between man and Atlantean was out of the question. But Xavier still dragged Namor around on his little crusade, and whenever Namor would have himself a temper tantrum, maybe want to go on a bit of a smashing spree, Xavier would use his mental powers to calm and pacify him, you know, against his will. Now, all of this ended up bubbling over and taking a horrible turn when Namor and Xavier found a mutant whose ability allowed them to turn one species into another. Namor thinks that this is something of a godsend, that they could use this mutant's power to convert every human on Earth and stop the next great war before it even happens. Xavier, rightly so, thinks that's totally crazy, but for all his trouble still ends up getting shot by a bunch of amped up small town cops, which in turn causes Namor to go nuts and on a spree. The only way to calm the Submariner down and save a bunch of lives is for Xavier to once again enter Namor's head, this time though with a bit of a twist. You see, he gives Namor his own little conscience, his own little mental psychiatrist in the form of Tommy, the man to which so much of his own PTSD was all tied up in. And while that day it certainly worked to help pacify Namor, Xavier, and indeed no one else, ever stopped to consider what crazy mania this could bring on in the future. So, you know, chop this up to yet another thing Xavier ended up ruining without knowing it. So now the good guys understand why Namor is acting so crazy recently, but that still doesn't answer the question of how they can stop him, especially when as the comic begins to wind down, we find out Roman, the kid Namor helped raise, turns out he's a high-ranking member of the US Navy, which means Namor quite literally has a man on the inside for his bomb plot as the comic comes to a close. And so that was Invaders issue number 4, everybody, and I gotta say I'm still really enjoying this series. We're given a lot of pretty solid answers to explain Namor's always seemingly shifting mental state over the years, as well as the bigger question moving forward, and that is, how can Namor's friends on the Avengers actually save him from himself in this situation? I appreciate too what Zdarsky does when it comes to painting Namor. Yes, he's had a hard life, yes, he's sympathetic, but he's also kind of a jerk too, who often tries to go too far in situations where he shouldn't. It's a layered, complex, and interesting take on a character, which is why I would give this issue a much-deserved 8 out of 10.
Oh, Hey there everyone, I'm Cape Joel. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. This is normally the part where I tell you to follow me on Twitter at Cape Joel, check out my Patreon page, my Twitch page, my Instagram, pretty much everything. Don't really have much of a format for this one. Someone just told me that I should change up these outros to keep them from getting stale, and that's what I'm doing. I got a new hoodie. There's other videos you can watch if you want them. I don't really know where I'm going here, working without a net. So thank you for watching, that's appreciated. Maybe give me a like, a subscribe, smash a button if there's a smashable button around, that would be most appreciated. And yeah, did I mention I got a new hoodie? Bye everyone. Also, smack things, smack some. Yep, that's what I do, that's my thing. Yep.